Professor XIONG.
对，Xiong Professor Xiong。
XIONG. I tried. Get close to an acceptable pronunciation of your name. Close enough. Thank you very much, Professor XIONG. It's a great honor to have you here.
So please turn on your video.
And your mic.
And yes, video and
now we have this grand finale, this final keynote session with you. So it's a great pleasure to have you here for us. The University of São Paulo, it's your home now, so we are invited to be with us, and we are look forward to listen to you because we need to learn more about China, and we have a lot of students, colleagues, and professors that want to know more about your country. And Professor Shu has invited you, has given us your name, and you have an impressive curriculum that it makes us to be really proud of having you here at the University of São Paulo. Thank you very much. I will ask for Professor Thomas to introduce you, and obviously Professor Shu to say a few words about you, because it's as I said, a great honor to have you here. Thank you very much. Thank you to have you to join us now, to be here with us in your evening or your night. And for us, believe there's a great value for the PhD of University of São Paulo to have you with us and to be closer with this relation of China and this academic relation of China. Thank you very much, Professor XIONG. Professor Thomas, please.
With pleasure. Professor XIONG, welcome to the University of São Paulo. On behalf of the university, in the name of Professor Víctor, Professor Julio, we welcome you to the university. We are in the program called PROLAM. PROLAM is the integration of the Latin American countries. So our students that are doing master's and PhD, they also have to do this research. For example, Brazil or another country in Latin America, and also China. This is a new course that we are giving this year in 2025. And we, with help of Professor Sophie, we did this first course with many great professors from China. And of course, I want to introduce Professor XIONG. Professor XIONG serves as the Dean of Institute of Regional and International Studies at University of International Business and Economics. His research interests include Asia-Pacific regional integration, international institutions, and Chinese foreign policy. He was a guest researcher at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs in Berlin from 2008 to 2009. Professor XIONG has 2 PhDs. One is in the international relations from Renmin University of China in Beijing. And the second PhD, that is really interesting also, is international integration from Aichi University, Nagoya, Japan. So I want to welcome Professor XIONG in our university, to all our students that are doing this course, and also now pass the floor to Professor Sophie to do her introduction. Professor Sophie.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor XIONG, for joining us. Actually, I'm now in China. I'm right on the campus of WIBI, that is the University of International Business and Economics. I'm glad to introduce you from near here, from near you. And Professor XIONG and I, we have known each other for a long time. And we often see each other on campus. Though we seldom stop to talk at length about something. This is the first time we join together online. So this is a good opportunity for me too. I would say that Professor XIONG is a very well-known scholar here at our WIBI campus and also nationally in China. He often talks on TV about various issues, and I can guarantee you that you won't be disappointed at his lecture. So without wasting much time, I will give the floor to Professor XIONG. Professor XIONG, please.
Thank you, Professor Thomas, Professor Sophia. And as Professor Sophia has been my old colleague and friend, and I'm also very glad to meet a new colleague and a new friend. And it's my great honor and pleasure to join you to join the international PhD program in São Paulo University. And today, according to our schedule, I will give you a lecture on China's geopolitics. And to speak of this issue, China's geopolitics, I would like to begin my lecture from establishment of People's Republic of China in 1949. And I would like to give my lecture with help of this document. And with this document, you can see the general framework of my lecture, my presentation. And as we all know, in 1949, this year may be an ordinary year in global history, but in China, it's very special because in this October, People's Republic of China was established in Beijing. And 6 months ago, 6 months before this event, in April 1949, Nanjing was occupied by the Communist Party of China. And Nanjing, in China's history, this city is very special. And from 1927 to 1949, Nanjing was the national capital city of Republic of China. So in April 1949, Nanjing was occupied by the Communist Party of China. It was symbolic event. It means the Communist Party of China has almost won the final victory of the Communist Revolution or New Democratic Revolution, or the Civil War. And it was very interesting. When the PLA, People's Liberation Army, entered the city of Nanjing, the U.S. Embassy stayed in Nanjing until August 1949. But Soviet Embassy moved to Guangzhou immediately with national government So that's why, yeah. So we can see the very interesting starting point of the foreign policy, geopolitics of the People's Republic of China. But 6 months later, when Mao Zedong declared establishment of People's Republic of China on 1st October, 2 days later, Soviet Union became the first and earliest country to acknowledge People's Republic of China on diplomacy. And in fact, why U.S. Embassy stayed in Nanjing for almost 4 months? In fact, during these 4 months, the Americans just try to see whether United States could establish some new interaction framework with the Chinese communists. However, we can see finally U.S. Embassy retreated from Nanjing in August 1949. So why, after a few months of hesitation, finally Soviet Union became the first country acknowledge People's Republic of China? In fact, firstly, because of ideology. Yeah, as we all know, the People's Republic of China and Soviet Union shared the common ideology of Marxism, Leninism, or communism. Secondly, why I began my lecture from history? Because all the history can be regarded as contemporary stories. The second very important issue is about diplomatic acknowledgement and political legitimacy. Why People's Republic of China and the United States could not establish formal diplomatic tie in 1949 or in 1950s or in 1960s? Eventually, the two countries didn't establish formal diplomatic tie until 1979, 30 years later, after establishment of the People's Republic of China in Beijing. So, firstly, it may be very easy for us to find the common ideology to link the two communist countries in 1949. However, as we observe China's geopolitics, as we observe China's foreign policy, it's very possible for our international friends to ignore the very important issue in China's geopolitics and foreign policy, that is diplomatic acknowledgement. And as United States refuse to acknowledge the political legitimacy of the Communist Party, of a communist government, and the United States insisted diplomatic tie with national government, which has retreated to Taiwan since 1949. For the Communist Party of China, for the newly People's Republic of China, it was very hard to pursue a middle line between the two superpowers, Soviet Union and the United States. So it was natural for China to be a member of the socialist camp led by Soviet Union. That was the very starting point of China's foreign policy since 1949. And in fact, throughout Mao's life, he died in 1976. He lived at the age of 83. And throughout his life, he only went abroad twice, both for Soviet Union. And in December 1949, Mao launched his first and one of the only 2 foreign visits. Mao stayed in Soviet Union for almost 2 months. in contemporary international relations, such a non-state in a foreign country for the national leader, for a national top leader, is really abnormal. So we may be wondering why Mao launched his first visit to Soviet Union only 2 months later, only 2 months after establishment of People's Republic of China, and why Mao stayed in Moscow for such a long time, longer than winter vacation on campus. Why? Firstly, of course, asking for support and establishing mutual trust. And Mao went to Moscow in the name of celebration of the 70th birthday of Joseph Stalin. But in fact, Mao, he tried to find solutions to some disputes between the two countries. But it was obvious that it was very hard for him to find such solutions. So what were the disputes between the two countries from 1949 to 1950s? In fact, including position of Mongolia, Changchun Railroad, Port Arthur, or Lushan Port, and the city of Dalian. And here, I would like to give you a brief introduction of these disputes. Besides Mongolia, in 1896, Port Arthur was occupied by Russia, and the earliest city of Dalian was also established in late 1890s by Russians. And after the war, from 1904 and to 1905, the war between Russia and Japan, both of the port and the city were occupied by Japan. And the Soviet Union defeated Japan in August 1945 and occupied the port and city again. So Mao went to Moscow to negotiate with Soviet Union. In Mao's opinion, now the new China has been established. As our socialist comrade, Soviet Union should do something different from imperialist. Soviet Union should return all these privilege to the Chinese people. However, the negotiation was very hard, and it was almost impossible for the two countries to get some agreement. And Mao just stayed in Moscow, and he promised if there was no agreement between the two countries on these disputes, he would not go back to China. Finally, in February 1950, the two countries signed a new alliance treaty. This new alliance treaty, according to this treaty, Soviet Union offered China some kind of security guarantee. For China, in the early 1950s, this security guarantee was very important, as United States refused to acknowledge the People's Republic as a legal Chinese government. So according to international law and some other legal system, Beijing may be regarded as a regime of rebels. So security guarantee offered by Soviet Union according to the alliance treaty, very important for China's national security. However, on the issue of the railroad, the port, and the city, all
we are learning a lot so far, Professor XIONG.
or more than 200 students are listening to me. But can they see my screen? If I share the screen on this meeting room?
Yes, I'm just asking now because I have a feedback from Zoom.
I think even if they can read these words, may be helpful for their understanding.
They are seeing for sure. They are seeing the word file, but I don't know if they are seeing simultaneously your camera now. But they say yes, perfect. Professor,
just in this meeting room, if we share the document, you cannot see myself.
No, but I think I can see both you and the file. Yeah, so for me it's perfect. But for them, if they are not seeing you now, but they see the file, it's okay. Professor, we are learning a lot. Please, the floor is yours. Continue, no problem. It's perfect here. After we have a question and answer session, but they will ask for me. We have more than 200 students listen to you, so it's great for us, and so far it's everything perfect. Better now with the word, but it was very clear for us before as well. Thank you very much. Let's go on. I don't want to interrupt. Thank you.
Okay. Now let's go on. Yeah. So we can see, it's a very maybe it looks very strange for our international friends. Yeah, how does China work step by step to contemporary foreign relations, foreign policy, and how do contemporary China, I mean People's Republic of China, since 1949, start its foreign policy in a very strange international situation? And I would like to show you a stamp. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, just wait a minute. Okay, yeah, I would like to show you this stamp. Yeah, we can see. Even though you maybe most of you cannot read the Chinese characters on this stamp, but you can see the two men shaking hands with each other. You can see Tiananmen and the Kremlin in Moscow, and you can see the map of Eurasia from Europe to Asia. In fact, this stamp just to memorize in 1950, memorize the signing of the Nice Treaty, of the Treaty of Friendship, Alliance, and Mutual Help. So from the very beginning, China's foreign policy began as a country with military alliance, quite different from contemporary China, a military alliance with Soviet Union. Yeah. So why in 1950s China signed such a military alliance treaty with Soviet Union? So just to understand some issue, some question, not only historical question, but also contemporary question. Just as I have told our students, why in 1949, People's Republic of China, the new China, could not establish a normal diplomatic relation, normal diplomatic tie with United States, because United States refused to acknowledge the newly People's Republic as a legal government. So China turned to Soviet Union, not only because of common ideology of Marxism-Leninism, but also because of the non-question of diplomatic acknowledgement. And then Mao Zedong he went to Moscow and stayed in Moscow for 2 months because he was not satisfied with what Soviet Union could offer China. Although finally there was a treaty. Yeah, Mao and Stalin shaking hands. In fact, these two men didn't shake hands because Zhou Enlai, he signed the treaty. Zhou Enlai was also very famous in China. I can say is also very famous even in modern China, in contemporary China. He was a very famous diplomat, and he has been premier for more than 20 years in Mao's period. And Mao, why Mao was not satisfied? Because Soviet Union still controlled the railroad system, the port and the city in northeast China. Stalin refused to return all this to China. But in Mao's eyes, Soviet Union's control over this port, this city, could not be endured. Why? Yeah, please look at this picture. This picture published in a French newspaper more than 100 years ago, in the early 20th century, late 19th century. We can see in this picture, China written in French, just like a pizza, a cake. And we can see great powers just try to divide this cake. And we can see on the left of the picture is the British Queen, and the man beside her is a German, and the German, he got a piece of Kiaochou. Kiaochou is just the modern city of Qingdao in China. And besides the German, on the right side of the German, there was a Russian. And the Russian, he got a piece of Port of Arthur. Port Arthur, just today's Dalian in northeast China. To show you more clearly, I would like to show you a map. For our students in Brazil, it's very normal for you be not so familiar with Asia. Just like our Chinese students, they may be not familiar with South America. So we can see this map is an Asian map. And here in northeast China, here is Dalian, the most important city and the port in northeast China, and Qingdao, occupied by Germans in 1897. Qingdao located on the east coast of China. And so in Mao's opinion, the Soviet control of the railway system in northeast China, control of the most important port and city, was a heritage of imperialist aggression. For him, this was unendurable. So he made up his mind to change this. However, he was disappointed by Joseph Stalin, his communist comrade. Although Soviet Union offered China a nice treaty, offered China necessary security guarantee, Mao was dissatisfied. So we can see another picture. We can see Mao and Stalin. Yeah. In fact, Mao, he went to Soviet Union in the name of celebration of 70th birthday of Joseph Stalin. However, we can see Mao, from his appearance on his face, we cannot see happiness. Yeah, he looked very serious. Yeah, and then he stayed in Moscow for almost 2 months. And then what happened? And Mao went to China, would ask for support from Soviet Union, and to find a solution, of some disputes on sovereignty and territorial integrity, to get security guarantee. And he also would like to get some not only financial support or weapons, but also technological support. However, Stalin didn't offer China all this except an alliance treaty. However, in the following 5 years, I mean from 1950 to 1955, besides diplomatic acknowledgement and security guarantee, disputes over sovereignty and the territorial integrity of China found their solutions in the way of the Chinese expectations. The port, the city, the railroads, altogether were returned to China without additional political or economic conditions. In fact, the technological aid offered by Soviet Union to China may be one of the greatest technological aid throughout human history. The first automobile, the first aircraft, the first submarine, the first modernized mechanical works, and the earliest modernized industrialized systems were established in People's Republic of China with help by Soviet Union. So you may be wondering, why just in 5 years, Soviet Union became so generous that the Chinese almost got everything we wanted? What happened during these 5 years? First one, just Korean War. As our time is very limited, I cannot say too much about history, but you can find throughout the past 1,500 years, the traditional Chinese dynasties always fought against Japan for Korea. Why Korea so important for China, even in traditional time of dynasties? Because Korea has always been very near to heartland of China. Just this map, we can see, even today, Beijing, Korea may be the nearest foreign country to Beijing, except Mongolia. So Korea, peninsula of Korea, all security situation of Korea always be attached great importance. So how to understand China's geopolitics? You must understand the position of Korean peninsula in China's national security. That's why from Tang Dynasty to the People's Republic of China, from the 7th century to the 20th century, across 1,400 years or 300 years, the Chinese always fought against some other great power for this region, for this area. From Tang Dynasty to Ming Dynasty to Qing Dynasty, Korean Peninsula always plays distinguished role in China's national security. And in 1950, this test came again. And after 3 years fighting, finally, as we all know, now on the Korean Peninsula, there are South Korea and North Korea. And according to military, China and the United States, or People's Republic of China and the United States, got a draw in this war. North Korea belonged to the socialist camp, and South Korea belonged to the capitalist camp after this war. So today we can see two national capital cities. One is Pyongyang, the other is Seoul. So, but how about the effects of this war on China's international situation, on China's geopolitics? First, we have to say, to fight against the most powerful armed forces, most modernized armed forces in the world, China sacrificed a lot. More than 190,000 men were killed in the war. And then, besides the problem of diplomatic acknowledgement, Beijing and Washington formally became adversaries on the battlefield of the hot war during the Cold War era. As we all know, Cold War, that means there is no real war, no real fighting, no people killed. However, for China, the Cold War is not so cold. The Cold War sometimes was very hot. Why? From 1950 to 1953, during almost 3 years, Beijing and Washington formally became adversaries, fighting against each other on the battlefield of Korea. But what has China won from this war? Besides national security, as I have told you, Korean Peninsula always plays distinguished role in China's national security. However, besides national security, China, for the first time since the Opium War in 1890 and in 1840s, after so-called 100 years national shame, for the first time, China as the great power, the position and the role could be affirmed by international community. But most important for China, China proved itself not a common allied country, but a special and important partner in the socialist camp. And then China could win trust and respect from Moscow. China in this war proved itself. China was different from Poland, different from East Germany, different from Czechoslovakia, different from Bulgaria. China was not a common allied country, was not a common member in the socialist camp. And besides Korean War, the change of Soviet top leaders was also influential on the change of China-Soviet alliance. Joseph Stalin, he died in March 1953, and the successor was uncertain in the following 2 years. Please pay attention to this. As the Soviet successor of Joseph Stalin was uncertain in almost 2 years, all the candidates would like to win support from Beijing. Why? Because Beijing has been proved as an important senior partner, not a junior partner, but a senior partner. So if a Soviet politician could win some support from Beijing, from Soviet senior partner, it will be very helpful for him to be the top leader, succeeding Joseph Stalin. And it was also a coincidence. The ending of Korean War and the political influence of Beijing in Moscow strengthened almost took place simultaneously. To speak of this, we have to say something about Nikita Khrushchev. He was the Soviet top leader from 1955 to 1964. Nikita Khrushchev. Just during Khrushchev's period, there was a real honeymoon, between Beijing and Moscow. Not in Stalin's period, but in Khrushchev's period, the honeymoon. But this honeymoon was not very long, at most 5 years. In fact, maybe 2 or 3 years, very short. In only 10 years, we witnessed dramatic change of relations between the two countries. And from 1955 to 1956, maybe the peak of the honeymoon. Sweetest. In 1955, the railroad, the port, and the city were returned to China without any additional conditions. And also, from 1955 to 1956, the greatest technological aid took place. So even today, we should say something thanks to Russians, the greatest technological aid. However, following the peak of the honeymoon, Beijing-Moscow split appeared. And in 1957, Mao launched his second foreign visit to Moscow, this time in the name of celebration of the 40th anniversary of Russian Communist Revolution. And then just during this visit, there was split of ideology and foreign policy. In 1956, Nikita Khrushchev, I would like to show this man to you. In fact, he was vital for us to understand Soviet history, to understand the Soviet Union. Also important for us to understand the change of China-Soviet Union alliance. This man, on the right, just Nikita Khrushchev. On the left, Mao Zedong. Also quite different from the photo of Mao and Stalin. On this photo, we can see the two men smiling to each other. However, just between these two men, very serious dispute appeared. And Khrushchev, in 1956, he declared his foreign policy, Soviet new foreign policy, summarized as 3 pieces. 3 pieces. What are 3 pieces? First one, peaceful coexistence. Second one, peaceful competition. The third one, peaceful transformation. And Mr. Khrushchev, he declared, he believed socialist countries can enjoy peaceful coexistence with capitalist countries such as United States. But these two categories of states were so different that the competition between them could not be avoided. So he advocated peaceful competition. And finally, he anticipated after 20 or 30 years competition, the advantage of socialist economic system, socialist political system would be outstanding, would be convincible for people in Western countries. And finally, in presidential campaign, presidential election, or parliamentary election, the communist leaders would be elected as president or prime minister or premier in Western countries. And then peaceful transformation from capitalism to communism, to socialism could be achieved. Under this ideology of foreign policy of three pieces, the first detente between the East and the West took place from 1956 to 1962 during the Cold War era. However, in Mao Zedong's eyes, Nikita Khrushchev was too simple, too naive. In his ideology, United States couldn't be peace-like. United States always favor war. Peaceful coexistence was unpractical. Peaceful competition and peaceful transformation were almost impossible. So, in Mao's eyes, United States seemed very strong, powerful, but paper tiger. And his Soviet communist comrade, Nikita Khrushchev, was naive. But in the eyes of both of the superpowers, I mean, United States and Soviet Union, Beijing was just a warlike rooster. And in Washington's eyes, Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev, was rather rational. And Mao Zedong, China, was aggressive. So why Mao Zedong could not accept Khrushchev's ideology, could not accept Khrushchev's foreign policy, three pieces? As we all know, today China always initiate peaceful coexistence. But why 70 years ago Mao Zedong refused Khrushchev? Mao Zedong criticized Khrushchev as too simple, too naive. Because there are some fundamental reason. Go back to the old issue, but also contemporary issue, diplomatic acknowledgement and political legitimacy. That means United States and most of the countries on the world by the end of 1950s still refused to offer diplomatic acknowledgement on People's Republic of China. Still obvious for Soviet Union to try to make China an East European style satellite. But Mao insisted China should be an independent allied state in the socialist camp. And then in 1958, the dispute between the two communist parties, between the two leaders, between the two countries became more obvious. It was the military conflict across Taiwan Strait. And in 1958, to challenge Washington-Taipei military alliance treaty, Mao decided to bomb the coastal islands controlled by Chiang Kai-shek, by the Taiwan side. As Taiwan question is heritage, is consequence of the civil war in China between National Party and the Communist Party. After 1949, some coastal islands in Southeast China are still administrated by Taiwan, by National Party, by national government. And in August 1958, to challenge the military alliance between United States and Taiwan, Mao decided to bomb the coastal islands controlled by Taiwan, by National Party. This bombing annoyed Washington, annoyed Chiang Kai-shek. However, this bomb frightened Nikita Khrushchev. In August 1958, maybe just the second day or third day after the bombing of the coastal islands, Nikita Khrushchev flight from Moscow to China. He found Mao Zedong and just asked him, yeah, are you crazy? You are involving Soviet Union with a nuclear war against United States. You may be destroying the world. But for Mao, yeah, in Mao's eyes, Khrushchev, he was too simple, too naive. And Mao just responded to Khrushchev, yeah, you needn't to be frightened, yeah, and it's China's internal affairs. In Mao's eyes, Taiwan question of Taiwan should always be China's internal affairs. So he responded to Khrushchev, you needn't to be frightened. Yeah, I wouldn't involve you into a war with United States. Yeah, it's China's internal affairs. But in Khrushchev's eyes, Mao, yeah, were just like a warlike rooster. But the substantial dispute between the countries, in fact, is just in this way. Soviet Union would like China to be a subordinated partner, to be a part of Soviet foreign policy strategy. But Beijing, yeah, Mao insisted independence of China's foreign policy. And then in 1960s, in the following decade, Beijing-Moscow relations deteriorated continuously. Conflicts moved beyond ideology and foreign policy, moved to real military conflicts on the border between the two countries. In this way, if we say the disputes over ideology or foreign policy is also Cold War between two socialist countries. But in 1960s, there were hot wars, the border conflict. And the Sino-Soviet border may be the longest border throughout the world, from North Korea to Afghanistan. From North Korea to Afghanistan, yeah, almost 10,000 kilometers, including the border between Mongolia and China. Yeah. In fact, Mongolia was a highly subordinated state of Soviet Union throughout the Cold War era. Mongolia even was always regarded as the 16th republic in Soviet Union. So this long border throughout the 1960s, yeah, the situation was highly intensified. So in 1960s, we witnessed continuous deterioration of Beijing-Moscow relations. And then the Cold War escalated to hot war. And the most serious border crisis, military conflict, took place in 1969. The two countries almost stood on the brink of a nuclear war. And tensions between the two countries continued in the 1970s. Meanwhile, Sino-US relations continued tensions and confrontations during 1960s, especially in Vietnam. Yeah. And besides Vietnam, Washington continued to refuse to offer diplomatic acknowledgement on Beijing and try to prevent Beijing from taking the seat of China in United Nations. So 1960s was a period of hardship for China's foreign policy. However, just during this decade, a new space, new room for China's foreign policy appeared. It was the Third World. Today, we prefer the new conception, Global South, China, Brazil, both of the two countries belong to Global South. But in the 20th century, or well, we always say the developing countries or the Third World. 1960s witnessed independence of dozens of African countries. And since 1963, China started cooperation with African countries. And in 1963, the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai paid the first official visit to African countries. And also, in this decade, China started a process of redefinition of its international role from a member of socialist camp to a member of developing countries, since 1960s. So that's why even today, China always emphasizes China will be a member of Global South forever. So since 1960s, China's international mission experienced subtle change, continuous change, from contribution to global revolution to contribution to development of the developing world. So we can understand the change from 1950s to 1960s. But the real diplomatic breakthrough happened in the coming decade, in 1970s. In July 1971, Assistant to US President of National Security Affairs, his name was Henry Kissinger. During his open visit to Pakistan, he paid a secret but significant visit to Beijing. During his open stay in Pakistan, Mr. Kissinger spoke to the public, told the public he was sick. He had to go to hospital for 2 or 3 days. If the public could not see him, please take it easy. He was at hospital. But in fact, he was not at hospital. He came to Beijing. And during his secret but significant visit to Beijing, he met Mao and had a 2-day negotiation with Zhou. But why this visit had to be secret? Firstly, Beijing and Washington have been adversaries, not only in a Cold War, but also in 2 hot wars for more than 20 years, from Korea to Vietnam. Secondly, Washington continued to refuse to offer diplomatic acknowledgement on Beijing and continued its diplomatic acknowledgement on Taipei. But why did Mr. Kissinger come to Beijing? For what? First one, for ending of US military operations in Vietnam. And Kissinger tried to pursue an honorable withdrawal of US troops from Vietnam. And besides this, he would like to improve US position in the Cold War competition against the Soviet Union. But for China, it was also a great opportunity. For what? For ending of isolation. As we have known, China had been adversaries for both of the 2 superpowers during the Cold War era. And another important significant event was the change of the seat of China in United Nations. Beijing took the seat of China in United Nations in October 1971. United States, as a permanent member in Security Council, didn't veto Beijing's entrance in United Nations. Yeah. Of course, United States didn't support Beijing's entry into United Nations. United States didn't veto it, And then China started the process of being a full member of the international community. And when can we conclude that Beijing finished this process of being a full member of the international community? Entry into WTO in December 2001 is very important, it's symbolic. After Kissinger's secret visit to Beijing in July 1971, and Beijing's entry into UN in October 1971, in February 1972, US President Richard Nixon paid an open but sudden visit to Beijing. Why I call it sudden? For whom it was sudden? For Taipei, for Tokyo, for Seoul, Saigon, Bangkok, Moscow, London, Paris, and so on. For all these countries, Nixon's visit to Beijing was sudden. Why? Because Washington continued to refuse to offer diplomatic acknowledgement on Beijing and continued its diplomatic acknowledgement on Taipei by February 1972. And Nixon didn't inform US and other countries in Asia and Europe in advance. So in their eyes, this visit was rather sudden, unpredictable. But why did Nixon pay such a visit to Beijing? And Nixon, during his visit to Beijing, he met Mao and had a one-week negotiation with Zhou Enlai. And then we always regard Nixon's 1972 visit to Beijing to Shanghai as the starting point of the new phase of Sino-US relations. However, in more than 6 years after Nixon's 1972 visit to China, there was no formal diplomatic tie, formal diplomatic relations between the two countries. And what's the problem? Taiwan question of Taiwan, Taiwan question. Although Richard Nixon, he was eager to improve Sino-US relations, he couldn't give up Taiwan. In fact, during 6 years, more than 6 years, after Nixon's 1972 visit to Beijing, Washington always tried to maintain diplomatic tie with Taipei and Beijing simultaneously. It was in fact dual acknowledgement. But for Beijing, dual acknowledgement was in fact two Chinas, or one China and one Taiwan. It was totally unacceptable. Cannot be acceptable. However, on the whole, Beijing-Washington relations has been continuously improved in the following a few years. Besides Beijing-Washington relations, the diplomatic ties with Tokyo, Canberra, Ottawa, Brussels, and so on have been established. In this way, we witnessed the revival of Beijing's engagement with the West as a whole in 1970s. By 1969, only 49 countries established formal diplomatic tie with Beijing. By 1977, 110 countries, states, have established foreign diplomatic tie or formal diplomatic tie with Beijing. So 1970s was a real turning point, substantial turning point for China's geopolitics. Since 1970s, even according to international law, according to international legal system represented by United Nations, Beijing was qualified to be on behalf of all China. Now let's turn to Vietnam, for a short moment. In April 1975, North Vietnam occupied Saigon, the capital city of South Vietnam, and Vietnam achieved reunification. However, after this, Hanoi-Beijing relations deteriorated continuously, partly because of Beijing-Moscow split. As Vietnam tried to be a firmly allied state country in Southeast Asia of Soviet Union, Hanoi-Beijing relations deteriorated. And ultimate ending of Beijing-Hanoi friendship happened in 1978, when Hanoi invaded Cambodia with support by Moscow. For Beijing, Moscow and Hanoi's hegemonic ambition in Southeast Asia is unacceptable. And then, in February 1979, there was a border war between Beijing and Hanoi. However, here I have to say, this was just the final page of the traditional geopolitics in China's foreign policy. Why? A new period is coming. In December 1978, the Communist Party of China decided to start reform and open policy to the outside world. And then, in January 1979, Deng Xiaoping paid a formal visit to United States. And finally, United States gave up diplomatic tie with Taipei. Formal diplomatic tie was established between Beijing and Washington. Although the new period has come, we can still see continuity of the old interactions. For China's diplomacy, for China's foreign policy, diplomatic acknowledgement has always been important. In fact, diplomatic acknowledgement, this question is just the nature, substantial nature of Taiwan question. And besides this question, another important perspective to observe China's foreign policy, China's geopolitics, is to analyze, observe the process of China to be a fuller and fuller member of the international community. China returned to International Olympic Games in 1984. Yeah, for the first time, People's Republic of China participated in Olympic Games. Yeah. So we can also have a brief review of economic interactions with the outside world before 1978. Just similar to geopolitics, the economic interactions with the outside world before 1978 can also be summarized as isolation. Yeah, or self-isolation. First perspective to observe economic interactions with the outside world before 1978. We can find during Mao's period, China tried to produce almost all the industrial and agricultural products, as many as possible. So international trade, not so important. Our University of International Business and Economics, UIBE, was even dismissed in 1970. Why? As international trade not necessary. Why should we have UIBE, University of International Business and Economics? Second perspective, to observe and analyze China's economic interaction with the outside world, was foreign aid. Although China was a developing country, a very poor country in 1970s, even 1960s, China tried to offer economic aids to underdeveloped countries. So we can see two perspectives. One is self-supply economic system without international trade, with little international trade. Second, economic aid to the third world friends. However, since 1978, two conceptions have been more and more important in China's economic interactions with outside world. And to understand this, we can understand China's geopolitics better. Trade and investment. And in 1978, our university, UIBE, reconstructed in Beijing, reopened in Beijing. After 1978, more and more imports from outside world. The Chinese market became open again to the global economy. And here, to be more specifically, Chinese market became open to the West again. Besides trade, FDI also played a more and more important role in China's economy, in Chinese economy. On the whole, 1980s could be regarded as a honeymoon between China and the West during the final decade of the Cold War. And as Deng Xiaoping himself defined, the most important issues in this period is peace and development. And in Mao's period, the most important issue throughout the world were war and revolution. But now, in 1980s, in Deng's period, the most important issue throughout the world were peace and development. However, even in this decade, something continued. First, Taiwan question may be more exact, may be more accurate. Taiwan question is not only a question on sovereignty and territorial integrity, but also on political legitimacy. Yeah, as this question is the heritage of the civil war between the two parties. And the second continuity in 1980s was independence of foreign policy. China didn't want to be subordinated to any superpower's policy. While there was a honeymoon between China and the West, in 1980s, China always waited for improvement of Beijing-Moscow relations. So, throughout the 1980s, the main theme of China's foreign policy was to be engaged in global market and the international community. Besides the border conflict with Vietnam in 1980s, China enjoyed substantial peace in this decade. Just as Deng Xiaoping concluded, peace and development were most substantial issue in this period. However, in 1989, we witnessed ending of the honeymoon between China and the West. The direct reason, the apparent reason, was the incident at the Tiananmen Square. However, the profound reason was the dramatic change of international relations, especially dismantlement of Soviet Union and ending of the Cold War. And then China became the biggest socialist country after the ending of the Cold War. So, in early 1990s, outside China, especially in the West, one question was prominent. Would China be another Soviet Union, or primary Cold War adversary of the United States, just like Soviet Union throughout Cold War era? And inside China, just inside China, among the Chinese people, even inside the Chinese Communist Party of China, the question, would the reform and open policy continue? By 1992, the question inside China was clearly answered. The 14th National Congress of Communist Party of China declared the new ambition of the economic reform to construct socialist market economy. This declaration was revolutionary. Why? According to classical Marxism-Leninism, according to classical ideology of communism, market economy should not be the best choice for a country. Planned economy should be best choice. However, in 1992, China declared to construct socialist market economy. So it's a kind of revolution, ideological revolution. And then the reform and open policy continued And by 1993, the question outside China in the West was partly answered. In this year, China joined APEC. The new leader succeeding Deng, Jiang Zemin, paid his first visit to United States by participating the APEC summit in Seattle, United States. During this visit, Jiang had a face-to-face talk with US President Bill Clinton. And Jiang sent a message to Bill Clinton, sent a signal to Bill Clinton. China didn't want to be another Soviet Union, our primary Cold War adversary of the United States. However, United States response of United States was still uncertain until 1995. By 1995, finally, the Clinton administration declared its China policy as engagement. What's the meaning of engagement? Engage China in international affairs. Of course, United States regarded itself as a leader of the international affairs. So, engagement means United States as the global leader welcome China to join international system, engage China in international system. However, it was a positive signal for Beijing. How to understand, this signal was positive. We should understand great difference between engagement and containment. Containment was the main theme of Washington's Soviet policy in Cold War era. But engagement means China may be a competitor, but not a rival or adversary. But 1 year later, between United States and China, there was a military crisis. The military crisis across Taiwan Strait. For the first time, the local leader of Taiwan declared Taiwan and mainland China were two independent sovereignty countries. The situation became very serious. Why? Even though after 1949, across Taiwan Strait, there were military conflict. As I have told you, in 1958, Mao decided to bomb the coastal island controlled by Taiwan. However, from Chiang Kai-shek to his son, throughout almost more than 30 years, almost 40 years, the government on the island insisted Taiwan should be a part of China. Taiwan and mainland China belong to one country, belong to one China. The only dispute was in their eyes, China should be so-called Republic of China. But as we all know, China should be People's Republic of China. But from 1994 to 1996, the local leader of Taiwan experienced subtle but continuous change. Professor Víctor?
Sure. Yes.
Do the students need a break?
Well, if you want to do a break for us, it's for us. I don't think our students will need it because they are free for leave and come back.
Okay.
But if you want, we can do it for 4 minutes.
So I will go on. Because I find I have too much to communicate with our students. I'm always afraid time is limited.
No, we have a lot of details. But for us it's very important to have this, and it's way interesting for us. So you can go on. We have a limit time, to be honest. But for you are free to continue, because everybody's here listening to you with a great attention, because it's really interesting. So we can go on, but I insist, if you want to stop 2 minutes, it's for us, it's we can do a break. From our side, from our students, no problem, we can go on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would prefer to go on.
Perfect. You say, thank you very much.
So, the subtle change and the continuous change around the Taiwan question. Yeah, the local leader of Taiwan, almost 30 years ago, from 1994 to 1996, yeah, he began to declare Taiwan and mainland China were two independent sovereignty countries. That was quite different from previous official opinion of Taipei. Yeah, previous official opinion insisted that Taiwan and mainland China belong to one China, but this China is Republic of China. So for Beijing, this was a new idea of Taiwan independence. And then there was military crisis across Taiwan Strait in 1990s. Beijing launched the military exercises as deterrence to Taipei, and US aircraft carriers entered Taiwan Strait as counter-deterrence. However, after Bill Clinton started his second presidential term, China-US relations was improved again. In November 1997, from late October to early November, Jiang paid a formal visit to the United States, the first time since the ending of the Cold War. And during his visit, he played the piano, he played the guitar, he sang some English songs, and he even read some English poems. And Jiang presented a new image of communist leader of China to American public, to the Western public. Of course, this visit improved the bilateral relations greatly. Only 8 years later, Bill Clinton paid a 9-day formal visit to China. 9-day formal visit. It's a very long stay. 3 years later, Condoleezza Rice. I'm not sure whether our student Condoleezza Rice, as they are very young. And Condoleezza Rice, I would like to show her portrait to you. Just this lady, Condoleezza Rice. She was very famous in international relations throughout the first decade of this new century, of the 21st century. She was the assistant to national security affairs, and during the first presidential term of George W. Bush, and she was Secretary of State during the second presidential term of George W. Bush. She played a very important role in US foreign policy from 2001 to 2009. And she published a paper on the Journal of Foreign Affairs in the United States. In this paper, she criticized Bill Clinton fiercely for the 1998 visit to China. In her words, she said, there should be no US president like Bill Clinton anymore. This man spent 9 days in China without any stay in any Asian allied countries. That means, yeah, firstly, Bill Clinton spent too many days in China. Secondly, yeah, he only stayed in China. He had no any stay in other allied countries of the United States, such as Japan, South Korea, Philippines, Singapore, or Australia, or New Zealand. So Clinton, yeah, 1998 visit to China may be regarded as a peak of second honeymoon since 1978. His first stop
Pessoal, professor XIONG caiu a internet dele. Vamos esperar um pouco. Ele, como vocês viram, ele ofereceu para fazer um break e o nosso horário já está muito ultrapassado. O conteúdo está interessante demais para eu pedir para ele interromper. Professor Sophie, do you have any kind of communication with Professor XIONG to tell him that he's freezed or he's out of our VOOF, because probably he isn't aware. Maybe he's continuing with the lecture. I don't know if Professor XIONG, are you hearing us? Because you are freezed for us. Or Sony for me, I don't know, but I think. Professor XIONG leave the room, so it's kind of a good news, because then we know that he knows that it was free. So I think he's coming back. I also had connection problems, but from my side, from internet, Professor too. I had connections problem to passing through, but coming through okay.
Hello, Professor Víctor.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
I think
I'm sorry, just I went off for a few minutes because I'm suffering from jet lag. To keep myself awake, I went to wash myself a little bit. That's embarrassing.
No,
but you know, it's inevitable that I'm suffering from the jet lag. Still suffering.
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
Professor XIONG had a connection issue.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I don't know if because he's coming back. He's coming back.
Okay.
Oh,
wonderful.
So it's so many details, and it's so interesting what he's saying for us. Another perspective. So I can't interrupt. For me, it's brilliant what we are hearing now. So, Professor XIONG, you are back. You are back.
No, I'm sorry. Something's wrong with my internet work.
Perfect. I was telling Professor Sophie that you had so many details, and it's so interesting that I can't absolutely interrupt you with time issues, and you are absolutely free from continuing because for us it's a really light on the what is the Western geopolitics in a nutshell. So we are hearing you from now on, and the connection issues are not a problem. Our students are still very interested and asking a lot of questions here. So please go on with your lecture if you could, because we are on the we need your not I would say your conclusion, but not the rest of your informations, because we want to know. Please go on, and if you have another connection issues, that's life, but we need to the show must go on because it's brilliant, really. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks to your understanding. I'm really sorry for the connection problem and something wrong with my internet connection. And now let's go back to 1998. Yeah. And just 27 years ago, Bill Clinton, his first stop was at Xi'an. Yeah. In his own words, he would like to enjoy traditional culture and Chinese history. And then he went to Beijing. He came to Beijing, and he had a formal summit with Jiang. During his stay in Beijing, he clearly declared United States opposed Taiwan independence. And it was the most friendly signal to Beijing. And he also together with Jiang, declared to establish constructive strategic partnership. Yeah, so we can see only 27 years ago, yeah, and almost 50 years after 1949, there has been a constructive strategic partnership between the two countries. And then he went to Shanghai. Yeah. In Shanghai, he declared he would like to observe the economic miracle of China, the economic achievement during the past 20 years since 1978. And then his first stop was Guilin, a beautiful city in Guangxi, famous for the sightseeing, for the beautiful scenery. And here I have to say more about Hong Kong, his final stop during the 1998 visit. He arrived at Hong Kong maybe June 2nd or June 2nd. And one day before his arrival in Hong Kong, Jiang was in Hong Kong. Jiang in Hong Kong for what? On 1st July 1997, Hong Kong was returned to China's jurisdiction. So, 1st July 1998 was just the first anniversary of Hong Kong's return to China's jurisdiction. Jiang went to Hong Kong for this ceremony of first anniversary. And Bill Clinton, as US president, arrived in Hong Kong on the second day. The signal was very strong and very positive. United States was very glad to see what happened during the past 1 year. It was the only US president paid an official visit to the city since 1997. So we can see by summer 1998, China-US relations, just like official statement, strategic partnership. By this moment, it seemed everything would be all right between Beijing and Washington, in 1998. And then let's move away from United States, turn around to Russia, Japan, Europe, and ASEAN. For Russia, I have mentioned Soviet Union for many times during the past more than 1 hour. And the Beijing-Moscow relations were not smooth during the Cold War era until Mikhail Gorbachev paid a formal visit to Beijing in May 1989. It was the first time of a Soviet leader paid a visit to Beijing since 1959. That means during the past 3 decades, no high-rank communication between the two countries. Was it too late? We can say yes for China-Soviet relations, as Soviet Union dismantled 2 years later. But for China-Russia relations, it was early enough. When Russia became an independent sovereign state after dismantlement of Soviet Union, the new starting point of Beijing-Moscow relations was fairly good. Beijing has shown enough respect to Russia's historic choice of political and social system. Beijing was also eager to establish and enjoy mutual trust along the 10,000-kilometer border from North Korea to Afghanistan. Furthermore, Beijing would like to learn advanced military technologies and import advanced military equipment. And on Russian side, Moscow would like also to establish mutual trust along the longest border in the world. Moscow would like to improve the economic situation by exporting of military and civil goods to China. The Chinese market, for Moscow, really beneficial. However, during the 1990s, primary interests and the intentions of Moscow's foreign policy were to be engaged and integrated in the West. Meanwhile, Moscow was trying to maintain its sphere of influence in former Soviet republics and some East European countries. We may conclude in this way. During 1990s, Beijing-Moscow relations have been greatly improved compared to the previous 3 decades, but the bilateral relations were not very close, especially in 1996, after Russia joined G7, and then there was G20, G8 until 2014. And for Japan, there was no formal diplomatic tie between Beijing and Tokyo until September 1972, for 7 months after Richard Nixon's visit to China. During the final 2 decades in the Cold War era, Beijing-Tokyo relations in 1970s and 1980s were friendly on the whole. But even during this period of honeymoon, which was a part of the honeymoon between China and the West, history issue always played a negative role in the bilateral relations. For example, in 1982, some history textbooks described Japanese invasion in China as entering China, and these textbooks were permitted by the Japanese government to be used in schools. And then, with the ending of the Cold War, the political honeymoon ended between Beijing and Tokyo. During 1990s, Tokyo strengthened its military alliance with Washington. And in 1996, just the same year, when the military crisis across Taiwan Strait, Tokyo passed the Act on Neighborhood Situations. What's the meaning of this act? It described in this way: when the United States was involved in a military conflict in the neighboring region of Japan, Japan would assist the United States. According to some high-rank officials' explanation, the neighboring region included Taiwan. This was regarded as some kind of proactive operation to Beijing. So here, as we know, just in last week, the Japanese new Prime Minister, the lady, Takaichi Sanae, she declared, if there is military conflict across Taiwan Strait, Japan would assist Taiwan. The military conflict across Taiwan Strait should be regarded as military attack on Japan itself. So we can see today, Prime Minister Takaichi, her declaration has been much more proactive compared to 1996 Act on Neighborhood Situations. She directly declared the military attack on Taiwan could be regarded as military attack on Japan. But according to international law, during the past 30 years, so we can also see Taiwan question has always been extremely important in China's foreign policy. It has always been highly sensitive in China's foreign policy. So Prime Minister Takaichi's words are very dangerous in Chinese perspective. And besides history issue, besides Taiwan question, territorial disputes became intensified around Diaoyu Islands and East China Sea. However, during this period, the trade and investment relations between China and Japan became closer and closer. It was really ironical. China has been most important market and the investment target for Japanese economy in 1990s. So in both Chinese and Japanese, as both of the two countries use characters, they use 4 characters to describe the bilateral relations. It's called 正冷经热, means cold political relations and hot economic interactions. Beyond the bilateral economic interactions between Beijing and Tokyo, another positive factor maintained cooperation between the two sides. It was East Asia regional integration. So today, East Asia regional integration still important for China, still a very important ambition for China's foreign policy. So here we have to say something about ASEAN. ASEAN, maybe for our international friends in South Hemisphere, in South America, ASEAN may be very strange, but for Asians, ASEAN are quite familiar. In 1970s, as China improved its relations to the West, the relations between China and ASEAN were also enhanced. During the Cold War era, ASEAN only included Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Brunei, Thailand, and Singapore, all of which had close economic and even political relations to the West. In the 1980s, there was also a honeymoon between China and ASEAN, similar to Beijing-Washington relations and Beijing-Tokyo relations. So no wonder Deng Xiaoping, he declared the substantial issue of 1980s were just the peace and development. However, the honeymoon between Beijing and ASEAN continued and never ended since the ending of Cold War. This was quite different from Sino-US relations and Sino-Japan relations. Beijing has tried its best to win political and military trust from its southern neighbors, although there are territorial disputes in South China Sea. Beijing has been trying to share common prosperity with ASEAN. So ASEAN just this region, the Philippines, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Brunei, Indonesia, Singapore, on the south of China and the surrounding South China Sea. The new turning point for China-ASEAN relations in 1990s was the financial crisis in Southeast Asia from 1997 to 1998. To overcome this crisis, China offered financial aid and policy support to ASEAN countries. And then there has been ASEAN plus China regional cooperation. ASEAN plus China, Japan, and South Korea. In Chinese, we say 10 plus 1, 10 plus 3, because there are 10 members in ASEAN. So we say 10 plus 1, 10 plus 3. ASEAN plus China, Japan, and South Korea. And these regional institutions were established, which were the very beginning of East Asia regional integration, even Asia Pacific regional integration, besides APEC. And then let's turn to the West. Say something about EU. In 1970s, as China improved its relations to the West, the relations between China and the European community were also greatly enhanced. That means from 1970s to 1980s, the interactions between China and the West, on the whole, kept improving. In 1980s, there was also a honeymoon between China and the European community, similar to Beijing-Washington relations, Beijing-Tokyo relations, Beijing-ASEAN relations. And then this honeymoon continued and never ended since the ending of Cold War until recent years, until recent 8 or 7 years, especially since 2021, after Joe Biden became US president in January 2021. So I have to have question mark here. In fact, China-EU relations have been different from both China-ASEAN relations and China-Japan relations or China-US relations. After 1989, EU, in fact, European Community, EU, after 1993, joined the sanctions on China altogether with US and Japan. But in 1990s, China-EU relations have been greatly improved. Why? First, the market economy reform offered the EU greater opportunities in Chinese market. And similar to United States, EU also pursue policy of engagement towards China. And different from the relation to Tokyo, there is no history issue and the territorial dispute between Brussels and Beijing. All in all, there were no great obstacles in Beijing-Brussels relations until recent a few years. Now let's go to 21st century. Yeah, this contemporary period. The new century. Yeah. For China-US relations, the starting point was not very good. In 1999, the Kosovo War broke out. United States and other NATO members bombed Yugoslavia and Serbia to stop the humanitarian disaster in Kosovo. China and Russia scolded this military operation by the West. And then on May 8th, just around midnight, a US aircraft bomber B-2 bombed the Chinese embassy in Belgrade, the capital city of Yugoslavia. The China-US relations face great crisis by this moment. China accused the United States of the intentional bombing of Chinese embassy, and the US just described it as mistake of using wrong map. Frankly speaking, I believe this was intentional bombing. Despite the disputes on why the US aircraft bombed the Chinese embassy, the United States finally paid China compensations of $4,500,000 US for casualties, 3 killed and more than 20 wounded in Chinese embassy, and $28 million US for property losses. And then in November 1999, China and the US signed an agreement on China's entry into WTO. And then the biggest obstacle for China's entry into WTO was removed. And then 2 years later, in December 2001, as I have told you, China finished the process to be a full member of the international community by joining WTO. Despite what happened during the Kosovo War, China-US relations kept smooth in the year of 2000, the last year of Bill Clinton's presidential term. However, the year of 2001 witnessed a new crisis in Beijing-Washington relations. The new administration in United States was George W. Bush administration. Bush denied the constructive strategic partnership initiated by the Clinton administration. Bush redefined China as a rival, not a partner, at the beginning of his presidential term. Moreover, on April 1st, a Chinese fighter jet clashed with a US spy aircraft on South China Sea. The location of the clash was very near to Hainan Island. The Chinese fighter jet and the pilot fell into the sea and never appeared again. The US spy aircraft landed on an airfield in Hainan in urgency, and the 24 crew members were captured by China. Beijing required Washington to apologize for this incident, compensate for the losses of the fighter jet and the pilot, and promise to stop the spy flight along China's coast. However, Washington's response was, you should release the crew members as soon as possible, permit United States to repel the spy aircraft, and then it can return to Okinawa, and stop disturb on US spy flight along China's coast. A few days later, President Bush said sorry for the disappearance of the Chinese pilot, which was regarded as some kind of apology of Washington. Then Beijing released the 24 crew members. This was this is the picture taken. Beijing is releasing the crew members. Here is the EP-3 spy aircraft. Here is the flight route along the Chinese coast. Here is Hainan Island. However, just like US bombing of the Chinese embassy in 1999, the two sides could not get common conclusion on the evaluations on the clash. In the following a few months, there was deadlock in Beijing-Washington relations. The deadlock was ended by the 9/11 terrorist attack on United States. While the Bush administration shifted its attention to Middle East and launched two wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, Beijing went on with its efforts to be fuller and fuller member in international community. East Asia integration went on during the first decade in the 21st century. By 2006, besides ASEAN plus China, Japan, and South Korea, there was ASEAN plus China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India, the very beginning of ASEP or RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. So we call it 10 plus 6. 10 means ASEAN, 6 means China, Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and India. Meanwhile, Beijing-Moscow relations kept smooth, very similar to what has happened in 1990s. Russia still maintained some hope on the West, in spite of NATO's enlargements in 1999 and 2004. In 1999, Poland, Czech, and Hungary joined NATO. And then in 2004, the other 7 countries became NATO members. And the Beijing-Tokyo relations also kept smooth, while the situation of 正冷经热 continued, which means cold political relations and hard economic interactions. And the Beijing-Brussels relations enjoy a rather good starting point in the new century. As the French president and the German chancellor, both of these two men were very friendly to Beijing. Both Berlin and Paris initiated close cooperation with Beijing. In 2003, China was invited to take part in G8+5 summit in France. G8, maybe you should be familiar with them. And 5, China, Brazil, India, South Africa, and Mexico. So it's called G8+5. And in 2003, China blamed the US invasion into Iraq, all together with Russia, France, and Germany. During the following a few years after 2001, China-US relations has been gradually improved despite the dispute on the US invasion into Iraq in 2003. After George W. Bush started his second presidential term in 2005, the counter-terrorism wars in Iraq and Afghanistan went on, while Beijing-Washington relations enjoyed a new honeymoon until the Bush administration ended in 2009. I have to say, by now, it was the last final honeymoon between the two countries. In 2006, the United States, the George W. Bush administration redefined its China policy as trying to make China a responsible stakeholder. So what's the meaning of responsible stakeholder. It is a kind of metaphor. Yeah. That means international community may be observed as a corporation. The United States certainly regarded itself as the biggest stakeholder in the corporation, holding the biggest stake and the biggest responsibility, enjoying the biggest profit. According to this redefinition, China should also hold big stake, not so big as the United States, but also big stake and big responsibility, and enjoy big profit. On the whole, it was a positive signal for China-US relations. Why? That means the United States would like to see China take more responsibility in the international community, just very similar to engagement. By 2008, the year when Beijing Olympics was held, the bilateral relations are on the best moment since 30 years ago, when the formal diplomatic tie was established, according to official statements by both sides. It was ironical that Beijing-Brussels relations deteriorated around 2008 Olympics, as political leaders in both Paris and Berlin declared to boycott the Beijing Olympics. Meanwhile, it was US President George W. Bush who declared to pay a visit to Beijing to attend the opening ceremony of the Olympics. Then the Japanese Prime Minister Fukuoka Yasuo also declared to attend the opening ceremony. So the question is, why did Beijing-Brussels relations deteriorate from 2005 to 2009, while there was a honeymoon between Beijing and Washington? Yeah, today it was unimaginable. Firstly, there were changes of political leaders in France and Germany, respectively, in 2007 and 2005. In Germany, the new Chancellor, Angela Merkel, now we have been very familiar with her. She took the place of Gerhard Schröder as the new Chancellor in 2005. And in 2007, Nicolas Sarkozy took the place of Jacques Chirac as the new president in France. However, since 2009, Beijing-Brussels relations on the whole has been stable. Meanwhile, Beijing-Washington relations has experienced great challenges. Even today, no dramatic change. Yeah. Now let's firstly turn to EU. During her term as a German Chancellor, she became more and more practical. But for EU, a great crisis, debt crisis, from bankruptcy of the Greek government to Eurozone. And then China's economic increase has been great opportunities for Germany and the EU in Merkel's policymaking. In 2012, French President Sarkozy failed to continue his presidential term, and the leader of Social Party, François Hollande, became new president of France. As a socialist, President Hollande attached much more importance to common interests between China and Japan, or EU, than his predecessor. From 2009 to 2012, the EU edition of engagement of China policy has been clear. In the following 10 years, engagement has been one of the main themes of EU's China policy. Now let's go to United States. Now, it's Barack Obama administration from 2009 to 2017. Here we have to mention lady Hillary Clinton, wife of Bill Clinton, as Secretary of State during the first presidential term of Barack Obama. She advocated pivot to Asia. What's the meaning of pivot to Asia? United States should turn its eyes from Middle East to East Asia again, and then rebalance of Asia Pacific. What's the meaning of rebalance? There had been serious imbalance in Asia Pacific, which must be changed. But what's the meaning of imbalance in Asia Pacific? China's rise in Asia Pacific. So rebalance of Asia Pacific just means to take some measure to deal with China's rise. So what have Americans done to pursue rebalance of Asia Pacific? Firstly, military redeployment. Obama administration tried to withdraw US troops from Iraq before 2012 and declared the ending of the Iraq War in December 2011. For Barack Obama, United States shouldn't waste too many resources in Middle East and should concentrate on Asia Pacific. Secondly, regional economic integration, especially Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP. That's quite important. And China was excluded from TPP, while US, Japan, Canada, Australia, New Zealand are all TPP members, all together with 7 other countries in East Asia and Latin America. Since 1971, China has been a fuller and fuller member in international community. However, it was the first time since 1971 that China was excluded from an important regional multilateral regime, TPP. I would like to find a picture for you to observe it more clearly. So, okay, see, you cannot read the Chinese characters, but I guess you may identify the flags, So here is TPP, but later it became CPTPP, Comprehensive and Progressive TPP, Canada, Peru, Mexico, Chile, Japan, Vietnam, Singapore, New Zealand, Brunei, Australia, Malaysia, and the United States. And here is RCEP 10+6. 10+6 China, Laos, Myanmar, Cambodia, South Korea, Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia. So we can see TPP, China was excluded from TPP. So what could China do when it seemed that engagement would not be dominant in US-China policy any longer? To enhance RCEP, RCEP, there are quite a few countries as members of both RCEP and TPP. It's not difficult for us to find this. 7 countries, both members of both the institutions. So what would be the problem for RCEP? Many members attach more importance to TPP than RCEP in order to enhance political coordination with the United States and get market entrance in the United States. As a result, RCEP faced great hardships. So the second measure China has taken was BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. According to BRI, the first focus is international cooperation on infrastructure construction. Infrastructure construction has been left behind in many developing countries, but it is necessary for developing countries to enhance infrastructure construction in order to achieve economic increase. As a country which is located on the Asian continent, it is possible for China to link its infrastructure network, especially railroads and highways, with Asian, European, and even African countries. The second focus is international cooperation with developing countries. It is rather difficult for developing countries to get enough financial support to enhance infrastructure constructions, as it is always unprofitable in infrastructure construction. Then China's investment greatly meets the requirements of developing countries. After more than 30 years economic increase, China's FDI in the world exceeded other countries' FDI in China for the first time in 2013. So we can say in China, we experienced investment shortage. But now, investment shortage turned into investment surplus. And the BRI manifested developing countries as China's important economic partners. That means after more than 30 years reform and open policy, developing countries became China's important economic partners. Yeah, in the first 30 years, more than 30 years, United States, EU, and Japan may be most important for China's international economic interactions. But now, developing countries become more and more important, including Brazil. And China tries to achieve the economic takeoff in developing countries by infrastructure constructions, and then enhance economic interactions between China and the developing countries. There has been new emphasis of China's economic interactions with the outside world, while China tries to maintain trade and investment relationship with developed economies. But frankly speaking, nowadays, the trade and investment relationship with developed economies, especially United States and Japan, face great challenge. So we can see, especially Southeast Asia has been playing a more and more important role in China's international economic interactions, especially BRI. Yeah, Southeast Asia has been a very important part. Yeah, the first BRI railway program linking China's domestic railway system and the foreign country is China-Laos Railway. Yeah, and the China-Laos Railway just an enlarge of China's domestic railway system. Yeah, and it turned now a landlocked country as the very important railway center. Yeah. And Laos is the only inland country in Southeast Asia. Yeah. This country has no coast, but this country has China-Laos railway system. Now let's talk about more things on TPP. And the TPP was finally signed by its 12 members in February 2016, but the Obama administration did not hand the agreement to the US Congress for ratification. Because this year was the year when the US presidential election took place. During the election campaign, the Republican candidate Donald Trump criticized strongly that the TPP seriously hurt American working class and declared the US would retreat from TPP once he became the new host in the White House. It was ironical that the Democrat Hillary Clinton, one of the major designers of rebalance of Asia Pacific, also declared that she would reconsider the agreement when she became the new president. Finally, in January 2017, Donald Trump declared that the United States retreated from TPP. And then other 11 members, led by Japan, had to negotiate a new agreement, CPTPP, signed in November 2017. It is called Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership. Meanwhile, there has been great opportunity for RCEP. For Asian economies such as Malaysia, Singapore, and even Japan, a regional economic regime without the US cannot be more beneficial than a regional economic regime with China as its member. Then the negotiation for RCEP, for RCEP, has been greatly put forward during Donald Trump's presidential term. When Donald Trump advocated the America First, Asian countries were negotiating for RCEP. Finally, RCEP finished all the negotiations by the end of 2020, the last year of the Trump first administration in the United States. RCEP became a vital bridge between China and Asian economies. So we can see the geopolitics. If you would like to observe China's geopolitics, you should never ignore the regional economic institutions such as RCEP and the TPP. While RCEP focuses on trade and investment, BRI concentrates on infrastructure cooperation. Nowadays, RCEP and BRI have been most important two windows for China open to the world, for China's geopolitics, for China's neighborhood diplomacy. RCEP and BRI. Besides RCEP and BRI, many other multilateral regimes have been playing more and more important roles in China's foreign policy, such as APEC, BRICS, SCO, and G20. During the era of many countries' diplomacy with Chinese characteristics, it has been obvious that China has made up its mind to be a fuller and fuller member in international community. Besides multilateral international regimes, how does China deal with its relationship with other major countries? So our last part, final part. Oh, we have only 5 minutes left. Try to have a view, overview. For China-Russia relationship, the bilateral relationship has arrived at a new height in the past decade. As two neighboring major countries, China and Russia, has constructed mutual trust along the long border between the two countries. Moreover, China has been trying to construct a closer economic cooperation with Russia. The two countries try to enhance political coordination in a great number of hot issues. However, as to Ukraine, I have to emphasize this. China insists its principle that national sovereignty and territorial integrity should be respected mutually among different countries. Meanwhile, China also strongly criticizes the revival of Cold War politics and military alliance in Europe. And for China-EU relationship in the past 10 years, there have been more political dialogues and closer economic interaction between the two sides. BRI also covered Russia and the EU. Besides developing countries, China tries to find common interest with EU with help of BRI. And the China-ASEAN relationship. There have been great achievements in China's cooperation and coordination with ASEAN countries. The territorial disputes in South China Sea have been cooled down and put aside. ASEAN countries are both important part of RCEP and BRI. Although United States always would like ASEAN countries to make choices between China and the United States, ASEAN countries find its best choice should be neutral between the two sides. However, ASEAN countries have found more economic opportunities in China, such as RCEP and BRI. And as to China-US relationship, US-China policy from rebalance to Asia-Pacific to Indo-Pacific. What does the change mean? As a new term, Indo-Pacific was initiated by Donald Trump, emphasizing United States should integrate strategic interests in Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean. During the Trump administration, because of America First, the alliances led by United States have been greatly hurt. When Joe Biden became US president in January 2021, he inherited Indo-Pacific initiated by Donald Trump and took many efforts to reconstruct the alliance system led by United States and highlights values in order to reconstruct its alliance with EU, Japan, and South Korea. As a result, there have been security and military regimes such as Quad and AUKUS. But Biden administration did not return to CPTPP. His administration finally initiated IPEF. However, when Donald Trump became host in White House again, all this became the past. So nowadays, we can see recoupling and not decoupling. Decoupling. Have been dominant conceptions in US-China relations. Besides traditional security issues and economic issues, United States find great necessities in cooperation with China on other broad issues, such as climate change, environmental protection, counterterrorism. However, today, from Taiwan to South China Sea, from rare earth to chips, we can see the so-called competition between the two countries, China and the US, has always been intensified. In this way, how to observe China's geopolitics? Neighboring countries, especially Southeast Asia countries and the Central Asian countries, has been more and more important economic and political partner in China's foreign policy. So to understand China's diplomacy and China's geopolitics, we need to understand China's history and China's relations to major countries such as United States. To understand China's economic development and especially international economic interactions, that's very important. As time has been 10:30 Beijing time, 10:30 p.m. and I don't know what time is it now in Brazil, in São Paulo. Yeah, but I hope you can learn something from my lecture. Yeah, I will be happy to know this. If you have any question to me, you can raise them to me. So that's all for my lecture today. This evening in Beijing, this morning in Sao Paulo.
Professor Sean, it's very humble to say if you learn something, we learn almost everything with you about geopolitics in Eastern world. I like to thank you very much, because not even in my dreams I thought that someday we could have a class at the university, you know, few decades ago, with a professor in the other side of the world, in Beijing, where I've been 2 times, and to learn that much about geopolitics in China, and discussing China, and from the beginning of the revolution, from our days. Your perspective is something that for us in Western, for us in South America, I can say specifically from Brazil, is something that changed a lot of narratives that we have about why the world, or our Eastern world, or our Western world thinks the relation with China, with Asia as a whole. So we learned a lot. We learned about from my side, for the importance of what you said, and we don't learn it at school, as I say. From my side, from the important, the idea of a hot war, and China involved in a couple of hot wars, when we learn of just time of Cold War, of peace, in general peace, and now we learn or refresh our memory that things are not like this. So for the role that Korean War plays from China, from all the world, the war of the role of the North American presidents, and the sequence of president of North America, of Soviet Union by the time. And so for us, it was an outstanding lecture. We had the opportunity of having you. For us, was a great keynote, for final keynote, ending keynote for us. For our university, it's just an honor. I have a lot of questions here that are coming for us, especially on the subject of South American, of the relation of South American now. We are unfortunately we are seeing not a good perspective, especially from the United States, coming to the Caribbean Sea, the close of Venezuela. We don't know what will be the future, and but from peace, on the peace side, on the trading side, very good perspective in relation with China, with the South-South relation, with BRICS. So we had a lot of information and changing our idea during your outstanding lecture. For what can I say before I pass the word, this speech for Professor Sophie, is that
just say thank you.
So just saying that we know it's late in there, and we just say thank you very much, Professor.
Professor Xiong, you can stop sharing your screen.
Oh, okay.
Just that it's
Okay,
a
now,
great
okay.
honor.
It's my great honor and pleasure to have this opportunity to share some of my opinions, some of my research on China's geopolitics with our international friends across Pacific. Although the ocean is very big and vast, I hope our research can be much closer and closer in the future.
Very well said.
Thank you very much, Professor. The questions I will ask for our students to send directly for you because there's a lot of them and it's late. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Su. Professor Sophie, please, final words.
Okay. Professor Víctor, thank you for organizing this lecture, this session. You know, for us to share what we have and to share our perspective with the world, we need this platform. Thank you for providing us with this platform. On behalf of me, Professor Xiong, and Professor Xue, thank you very much. And we also want to thank all the students for participating, because you have been very kind and you were very patient. You attended every lecture of ours, and we were able to share with you guys our views. That's a very valuable experience for us too. We want to thank you as well. For today's lecture, we want to thank Professor Xiong, and he made a lot of efforts to provide you with the details. And he calculated exactly that what you might need, what is the gap in your knowledge system. So that was very intelligent of Professor Xiong. So let's thank him again together. And if you have further questions, I think he would be glad to answer them. And also for mine, if you have questions, you can send to me. I will return to São Paulo very soon, and hopefully in the future we'll meet face to face so that I can answer your questions. And thank you again. That's all I want to say, Professor Víctor. The floor is yours.
On behalf of the University of São Paulo, I must say that, not surprisingly, because I know Professor Sophie for a long time, but the importance of her in our course was very, very big, because she was the link, the connection between us and this great professor that we have. I am very glad to have you in our team, Professor Sophie, and now our team it's bigger with the inclusion of professors like Professor Xiong, that we are very glad. I will like to thank Professor Suzuki, that is not with us now, and Professor Thomas Law, that were the other connections and the other responsible for our course. The University of São Paulo is really happy and glad to have this connection with China, especially with these people like Professor Xiong, that show us the China from inside with another perspective. It's a great. I hope that this kind of academic cooperation lasts a long time. Thank you very much for you all.
Thank you, and see you later.
See you later.
Okay, bye.